Hello, everyone. Welcome to the recent episode of Man Cave Morons. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Kind of a light weekend in the sports world, so not a ton of stuff to cover. But we're going to jump right into free agency, Major League Baseball free agency. Some big signings happened since we talked last. We'll touch upon the Hosmer one first. Eric Hosmer signs with the San Diego Padres, an 8-year deal with a player opt out after the fifth. Pretty front loaded deal. Not a bad deal for a 28-year-old. Kind of question why the Padres are going out and spending this money. This is a team that has a lot of needs. I don't know if their thought behind this is maybe they can attract some other free agents. This is a good building piece. Again, young player. You're going to get him for the majority of his prime, and it's a player. It's a good setup for the player. Like I said, can opt out after 5 years. So if he goes gangbusters and he's 33 and wants to get a big time deal, he can opt out of that. So that was the first big signing. Then to switch gears and come back to the American League and talk about the Red Sox for a minute. First, they signed Eduardo Nunez, locked him up, a player that they had for roughly 38 games last year, I believe. And they signed him to a 1-year, $4 million deal with a player option for the second year and a $2 million buyout. So, really cheap for a guy who played well, has had moments during his career where he's played really well. And for a team like the Red Sox, who have Dustin Pedroia out for the beginning of the season, now you have Nunez, who can play second base, and he's a great utility guy. Can play all the infield positions, can play outfield if you need him to. Very versatile, and a guy that's performed, really well. And to get him for $4 million, there was a lot of people talking last week that geez, would you get him for a couple years, 3 years? What's it going to take? And I think $4 million was a pleasant surprise as a Red Sox fan to bring him back into the fold for that type of money was really good. But the big splash for the Red Sox happened yesterday, and that was J.D. Martinez. J.D. Martinez signs a 5-year deal worth $110 million. From what I've heard, the opt-out is after year 3. So again, it's a heavily front-loaded contract, which I love. Personally, I'd rather pay a guy when he's productive. I don't understand these large contracts where you're spreading out a 5-year for $125 million, spreading out 25 a year. I'd rather pay a guy, overpay, give him 23, 24 a year for the first 2 or 3 years, and then have it decline. And again, there's an opt-out after year 3. He's a 30-year-old player. If he's gangbusters for the next 3 years, great for the Red Sox, well worth the money. He decides to opt out, okay. You let him opt out at 33, and you let someone else deal with it. If he doesn't, well, it's still a friendly enough contract that you're not paying him that much in years 4 and 5. And hopefully you're still getting some productivity out of a guy at 34 and 35. So this is something that the Red Sox definitely needed. This was a team that had no pop in the bats last year. Martinez's last 3 years are 45, 22, and 38 from a home run standpoint. Getting him in the friendly confines of Fenway, putting him probably 4th in that batting order. Either with Hanley Ramirez possibly in front or behind him. It's definitely the last piece that the Red Sox needed. They weren't making a lot of splashes. They weren't going out and spending a lot of money. The Dombrowski and the ownership felt very comfortable with what they had in-house, and they really should. For a team that won 92 games last year, they have a lot of young talent. You hope that young talent gets better, continues to get better, produces next year. You hope the pitching staff kind of figures it out. I think you're going to get a different approach from Cora when it comes to running the pitching staff than you did John Farrell. Hopefully Chris Sale is not going to be gassed by the end of the year like he was last year. So I think this is definitely catapults the Sox back up there to compete for the AL East with the Yankees. Now, obviously, their lineup doesn't have the same pop as the Yankees does, But again, if you can put 35 to 40 home runs out of Martinez, hopefully you see Benintendi continue to grow. Hopefully you see Devers continue to grow and mature. And, you can get Xander Bogaerts in the mix. Hanley Ramirez hopefully can have a decent year for you. Now you're starting to see some more production. And from top to bottom, it's going to be a competitive lineup. Core's already come out and said Mookie's going to bat 1, Benintendi's going to bat 2. So then we'll see where things go from there. Whether it's Bogaerts is batting 3rd, maybe Hanley's batting 3rd, Martinez, who knows? We'll see that evolve through spring training. But this was a huge deal for the Red Sox. Something they needed to do, and again, the money makes perfect sense. Like I said before, I'd rather pay a guy, front load these deals so you're not hung out to dry at the end of the contract. And it was a lot of back and forth. The rumors were there was a 5-year, $125 million deal on the table. I suspect that if that deal was on the table, it wasn't set up the way this deal is, where maybe if JD thinks he can overproduce in the first couple of years, he can opt out and there's going to be more money down the road. So they finally came to agreement. I don't think there was a huge market for JD Martinez. There didn't seem to be a lot of other suitors stepping forward. I don't think going back to Arizona was really an option. So, I think it was the Sox and the Sox only. And I think they got him at a great price. So, the Sox are starting to come in shape now. Like I said, with Nunez, kind of solidifies the infield. JD, is he going to DH? Is he going to play first? He can play some outfield. It'll be interesting to see what the combination is between Mitch Moreland, Hanley Ramirez, and JD Martinez. My thought is if JD's the DH, he's in that lineup pretty much every day. Then does that mean that Hanley and Moreland platoon, or there's some variety of the three of them? But I think given the amount of money they're paying Martinez, you're going to see him out there a lot more. Hanley Ramirez claims he's slimmed down. He got on TB12, lost about 15 pounds. According to Tom Caron this afternoon, I heard him on the radio. He was saying Hanley's noticeably thinner. So hopefully that's a good situation. He came to Boston a little big, a big. Clearly, he was a guy who hit the weights a lot. He looked more like James Harrison than he did a baseball player. So hopefully he's motivated and he's slimmed down and he's ready to take the challenge this year and put up some offensive numbers. So looking forward to spring training rolling through. Looking forward to getting into the season, watching this pitching staff. And, seeing how JD Martinez and Eduardo Nunez work out. And again, Padres, it was an interesting move for them, picking up Hosmer. But this has been a really slow offseason. And now, we saw a little bit, a couple big names coming off the board there. But there's still a lot of guys out there. And it'll be interesting to see what trickles in here over the next couple of weeks as spring training has now started. What are the Royals going to do at first base? Who knows? But that's kind of just wanted to touch on those two signings that took place because there hasn't been a lot of activity, and now some of the bigger names have come off the board when it comes to free agency, with Yu Darvish coming off the board and now JD Martinez and Hosmer off the board. Hopefully we'll start to see some other deals start to trickle in. Moving over to the NBA All-Star Game. Not really going to talk much about the game, to be perfectly honest with you. I turned it off after the first quarter. My son and I were watching the game, and, after the first quarter, we were like, man, this is just terrible. It was terrible basketball. Apparently, though, they decided to play defense down the stretch, and it wasn't like a 190, 180 game. It was actually a fairly competitive game, and defense actually won the game at the end. When LeBron's team decided to, double team Steph with some bigs and limit his ability to get a shot off. What I really want to talk about, though, is just the spectacle of the weekend. The pregame, it was just terrible. The national anthem from Fergie is awful. The Kevin Hart introductions were painful. I'm a Kevin Hart fan, but the whole shtick, the whole thing, the one-liners, just get these guys out on the court, right? Let's introduce them, get them on the court. Let's get the game going. Let's end the whole everything going on. It's like a night at the Grammys. Even on Saturday, 3-point contest was okay. The dunk contest, it's just it leaves a lot to be desired at this point. They're, repeating dunks from previous winners. I mean, for Mitchell to pull out the Vince Carter dunk, really, I thought this was about you. This was about you coming with something new and different, and you're just wearing a retro jersey and you're doing the same dunk. I mean, the Larry Nance Jr. thing was kind of cool because it is his father, so you're kind of okay. I get it. He's paying homage to his old man. It makes sense. But you just want to see these guys. It seems like these guys can't come with any originality anymore. And it's unfortunate that you don't get like the LeBrons or the Russ Westbrooks and those guys competing in this, because I would rather see Russell Westbrook just drive down the lane and slam the ball as hard as he can and mean mug like he does, or see LeBron hit his head on the rim than watch what I watched on Saturday. It wasn't that great. So I don't know. All these All-Star games and these events are losing their luster. I don't know if it's time to go away from the All-Star game. I don't know what the ratings were, but it's just I don't think a lot of people I talk to and associate with don't watch the game. They tune in the weekend. They might watch the 3-point. They might watch the dunk. But again, it's just there's nothing there that's really holding your interest. So I don't know if it's time for like the NFL, for hockey. I mean, the hockey skills is fun to watch. The home run derby for baseball is fun to watch. But the game themselves, I mean, the baseball now, because there's no winner takes the World Series home field, is now been eliminated. The baseball game has always been good and fun to watch. But the NBA one is just, it's painful. So it looks like the format was fun. People enjoyed the format. It looks like that's here to stay, and it looks like next year they're going to at least broadcast the draft, which will be a good thing. So the format's okay. I didn't have a problem with the draft and doing it the way they did. For some people out there, they're going to say, oh, well, you're already worried about these super teams. Now you got these guys who are going to draft players to see how it is with them. And, will that change the landscape of free agency? I don't know if it's going to go that far. But maybe the NBA just should shut it down for a whole week and give everybody the week off and just allow everyone to regroup, because the event itself was bad. The lead up to the event with everything going on pregame was bad. Fergie was terrible. The whole thing was just kind of a mess. So I wasn't overly excited about that, but I felt I needed to touch on it a little bit just because it was so disappointing. But apparently the end of the game wasn't. So, shame on me for not sticking through the next 3 quarters after the horrendous first quarter, watching these guys chuck the ball up from all over. When there's no defense being played, why not just drive the lane every time? Instead, let's take 33-foot jump shots and miss, by 2 feet. That was just really painful to watch. So we can get that past us now. We can now move forward, second half of the season, and like we talked about last week, some of my predictions. Now we can really get back into the flow, get back into the nuts and bolts of the season, and monitor it and see what happens from there. I do have a bonus topic to throw in here that's not on the board. College game last night, Oklahoma and Kansas. Kansas is really looking good, really starting to hit their stride. They won by 30 points. Kansas is now 22-6. Oklahoma's 16-11. The big thing for me was Trae Young. Trae Young last night had 11 points. He did have 9 assists, but he was 3 of 13 shooting. And the last handful of games, Trae Young has had a really difficult time shooting the ball. And I think this is a classic example of a guy that came in gangbusters, and now people are figuring him out. Teams are figuring out. I think he's putting a lot of pressure on himself. And this is a guy whose stock is dropping. I don't know if Trae Young's going to enter the draft. Um, you know, from people I read and listen to, there's a lot of conversation that a lot of GMs don't think too highly of Trae Young. That might not be the case. I don't know. But this is a guy who I think stock seems to drop every game. I don't think Oklahoma is going to make the tournament at this rate. They're 16-11 unless they go on a huge run. They're out of the top 25, and they can be on the outside looking in come tournament time. And Trae Young decided to go to Oklahoma instead of a school like Texas Tech because he thought Oklahoma had more talent, was more ready than Texas Tech was. Well, Texas Tech's a top team this year, and Trae Young is sitting there struggling to get things done in Oklahoma. So it's going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be interesting once the season ends to see the NBA Combine, to see what Trae Young decides to do. More than likely he would still get picked in the first round just because I don't think it's a very deep draft and there's not a ton of talent out there. So he would probably get some guaranteed money. But the question is, how much time is he really going to get? How much time is he going to get to develop? He's going to have to go down to the G League. Is a team going to commit to him? So, again, I think we take these kids when they come in and, they come out on fire and they look good. Not a lot of people know who they are. Boom. And the media's building them up. ESPN's building them up. Here, Trae Young's in all the promos. And then teams start to figure him out. And I think Kansas figured him out last night. I think some of the other teams recently have figured him out. And now he's struggling. And now he's probably putting pressure on himself. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's tough for him. And it's tough to see a freshman have those issues. But they're going to have those growing pains. It's going to happen. And they're playing in a competitive conference. They're sub 500 in that conference. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because this team has been in a little bit of a tailspin, and Trae Young is kind of, a falling knife, and you don't ever want to catch a falling knife, and I just don't know, does he continue to struggle? If you see him going out game after game and continuing to struggle, look like he's pressing, look like he's stressed out, that to me is a telling sign, and it's got to be a telling sign to NBA executives that this might not be the guy. And for everyone who is like, oh, he's the next Steph Curry, again, we're rushing these kids along and we're rushing to the comments and the comparisons when, he hasn't even got through his first season yet. He's no Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons was clearly a better player. And, it'll be interesting to watch. But like I said, I just want to throw that out there because Kansas seems to be hitting their stride and playing well. Oklahoma's clearly going in the other direction. And one of the guys who a lot of people were saying, just a couple weeks ago was a lock for player of the year might not be so much as we continue through the last couple of weeks of the season. We're a little less than 3 weeks away from Selection Sunday. So looking forward to a lot of college hoops talk over the next couple of weeks. That really wraps up this episode. Like I said, not a lot going on with the NBA All-Star Weekend. That's kind of slowed things down. Major League Baseball free agency, it picked up a little blip on the radar screen. Basketball will be getting back into the swing of it at the end of this week. So we'll be discussing some things further. So hopefully we'll have another pod out on Friday or Saturday with some fresh new topics. Again, as usual, push this out. Go to the Facebook page, go to the Twitter page, send us a message, share this with your friends, family, co-workers, and spread the word. It's only 20 minutes to half an hour of your time, a couple times a week. We want to spread it out so people can listen to it. So have a great evening. We'll catch up to you later in the week. Thank you very much.